I'm going to show you how to set up your workspace to begin your retouch. So you'll know this from core skills training or like different training that you've done. You want to have everything really accessible for you to use, from actions to keyboard shortcuts and all of that stuff. So firstly, set up our brushes, so the brushes that we're going to need for our retouch later. So if you click into this brush here, we can actually create some brush presets. You can see I've got some here. This is background, skin and 10% flow, so I've got a few different ones, but we're going to create a new batch of brushes. So you're going to right click in the brushes palette and click create preset group, and you're going to call this Venture Retouch. I just got Venture Retouch here. So we're going to make a set of brushes to go into this Venture Retouch folder. We're going to call it Skin. This is going to be our skin brush. So it's the one that we'll use all throughout the next series of videos. Okay, so for this brush, in your brush you can change the hardness, so you can have it really hard or really soft. So we want it to be a nice soft brush because we want obviously that softness to even out the skin in our retouch. We're going to keep the opacity at 100% and we're going to turn the flow here to 3%. So some people you might see, you might watch this video and be like, oh, but I use the opacity and I have the opacity at like 10% or something like that. The reason why we use flow over opacity, and it works a lot better, because the difference between them, opacity controls the opaqueness of the paint. So with opacity, you're just changing the transparency. So it's like how much you can see it on the skin. And for that can take a lot more work. You might feel like you're constantly going over and over and over trying to fix an area, because all it's doing is kind of trying to change the transparency. But the flow controls the speed at which the paint is laid down. So if you imagine like it's painting with a spray can, it's like depending on how much pressure you use is how much of that paint is going to come out. So if you were pressing down really hard, you're going to get loads of paint. If you're kind of at a midpoint with that, you're going to get like a medium amount of that paint, and your skin retouch will then become much quicker and you're not going to have to go over it a few different times because you have a lot more control over how much of this kind of digital paint that you're using. Okay, so we've got this set up. We've got 3%, 100%, smoothing 3%, and then hardness at 0%. So we can go ahead and create a new brush preset within Venture Retouch, and we'll call that Skin. Capture brush size in preset. If you've got it set to a decent size, mine isn't set to the size that I want at the minute, so I'm gonna unclick that, but include the settings that we just made and call that Skin. It's got a nice little brush in here called Skin. Alright, now we're going to make a second brush, and this is going to be for our dodge and burn. And all we're doing here, we're going to change the flow to 10%, because with dodge and burn we want more of that paint kind of coming out of the brush, which you'll see later on. Keeping all the settings exactly the same. New brush preset. We'll call this Dodge and Burn. This is our Dodge and Burn brush. Okay, and we'll also make one for the background. So we'll see. For our background brush, we're going to call that Flow Opacity 100%, and then hardness put to about 50%. And now this will make a lot more sense when we come onto the statement and iconic images, so you can see how you're going to clean the background up in there, and we'll be using this brush. So I'm going to call this background. So we've got skin, we've got dodge and burn, we've got background. And that is all that we need. So we've got our brushes set up, and now we're going to move into the actions that we need. So you may already have some of these actions set up. I have my own little, I've got many different actions because I make different things all the time. Right, so we are going to create a new set of actions. So to create a new set of actions, we need to click on this button here. So this is going to create our little action group. So I'm going to click that and it'll create a little set. We'll call it Venture Retouch. Now, to create an action, if you want to make any in the future, you can make a folder like this, or they can be, they don't have to be in a folder, they can be loose, and all you've got to do is press this press plus to create the new action. Give it a name, but it's much quicker just to go down here. I'm going to click levels. Alright, and then so you've got your, we're going to name it signature levels. The set is within the Venture Retouch. You want to choose a function key that you'll use for your signature levels. Mine is set to F2. I'm not going to set it now because I've already got mine set up and I've had it the same way for a long time. But it's better to think about kind of the actions that you're going to use the most, have set up as close to the left hand side of your keyboard as possible, because ideally you don't want to be reaching across your keyboard all the time because that slows you down. You want one hand like comfortably on the left hand side of your keyboard, one hand on your Wacom tablet, and then we'll click record. Alright, and you're going to go down to the adjustment panel and choose levels. So within this, we just want to change the first value to 243. Now you can't see anything really now, and we need to see kind of those mid-tones and highlights and shadows all in the background just a little bit better. So we're going to change our opacity to 69%. Awesome. The next thing that you'll want to do is you're going to select your dodge tool. So this will be set in the action as well. Make sure again it's a soft brush. The range is set to highlights because we're affecting the highlights, and your exposure is set to 12%. Don't go over this because 12% is a good amount for it to only affect the background but not start to touch on these like lighter areas like on the hat, or if you had any white kind of pieces of clothing close to the background, because we don't want to start to dodge them as well. Alright, once you've done that, you can press stop and you've got your levels set up. So let's see, let's give them a go and see how that works. Perfect, so it's all set up. The next action we're going to do is called delete levels. So anything that you can set to an action is going to be really like invaluable to you. If you sitting there having to click on it, press delete takes too much time, but you could set it to F1 and then it's just going to delete that levels layer. So if we click plus, call this delete levels, set it to a function key as well, and delete. Now you could actually, that's delete levels, but you should be able to use that across any temporary adjustments that you've made. You should be able to just use that to delete it anyway. So now we've got signature levels, we've got delete levels. Now we're going to create statement levels. So I'm just going to drag in my statement image. Awesome. Okay, so the statement levels is so we can see what's going on in the background here. Can you see you've got pieces of digidust in your background, but you'll have some of them hidden within the hair. So we just want to be able to see what that looks like so we can get do a really quick clean up on it and remove those bits of digidust in the background. So we're going to call this statement levels. Again, choose a function key, click record. Okay, so this time what we're going to do, we're going to create a curve that we'll call solarize. Now solarizing is essentially kind of inverting the photo, like if you imagine what it would look like on a piece of film, and you'll see what that does in a second. So we're going to drag one to the top, drag this down to the bottom, drag this to the top, and this to the bottom, and now it looks a bit crazy. We're going to add a black and white layer, and then we're also going to add a levels layer as well. So can you see now, you can see all of that digidust in the background. If you're really good at keeping up with cleaning your sensor, you won't have that. So keep this value at 0. This value is going to be set to 0.40, and then this is 2.5, You might not always need this because you can see we can't really see in the background right now, but it's there just if you need to see a little bit extra into the background. So we've got those there, and we'll stop that there. I will leave, I think it's better to have these 3 set up already. Even if you don't need that levels one, you can just hide it. There we go, and just turn it on if you need it. And again, let's use our delete levels. There we go. There we go. And now it's deleted all of those layers. Obviously, you'll have it nicely set up with your action, your function key, so you don't have to click like I did. The next one is curve. So I like to have a curve action set up that I can use across all of my images. It tends to work across all of them. It's just a very basic one, similar to what we were doing in Lightroom earlier, but it's just good to have here in case you need to whack a curve onto something. So we'll call this one curve. Same thing again. Click in the adjustments panel, go to curves, and I'm going to create a really simple S curve, or a slightly wavy curve. It's not really an S curve. But what's great about this is when you use it in the future, you can just quickly press your function key, this will come up, and you can change it if you need to. You can change the opacity, whatever you want to do to it. And that one's there, so I'm going to delete that curve. Next action we're going to make to go into your little quick palette of actions now is going to be one for blur in the background. So you can see already we've got like bits of digidust in this background. Now you want to clean those up manually, but sometimes you just want a quick fix because you don't want to sit here and spend ages trying to get rid of all this digidust, and we can do that through I call it a background blur. So we're going to click the plus, call this background blur. Again, add a function key to it, whatever you want to use, and we're going to click record. The first thing we want to do is Control J to duplicate that layer, or you can right click and duplicate layer, but remember we just want to make this as quick as possible, so use your shortcuts. Go to filter, blur, and then surface blur. Alright, we want a radius of 35, a threshold, call that a threshold of 33. So we're just kind of blurring that background a little bit. And you can see now, I'm going to click OK. And we've got kind of like this blurred background, but we're starting to get banding, which you'll see a lot throughout statement. Because we're only working on an 8-bit file, the difference between 8-bit and 16-bit is that you have like different amounts of the range between colours. So an 8-bit image holds 256 tonal values within the red, green and blue channels. So you've got like 16.7 million colours. So between black and white, you'll have 256 tones of colour from each colour. If you're working on a 16-bit image, which you do for lumino printing, any statement photos, very good for image bank as well if from working from the raw file to begin with. It's got 65,536 tonal values within those same channels. So within that, you've got like this whole spectrum of colour. And when you're making changes and you're adding curves and different bits like that, working on a 16-bit file is a lot better because you've got the whole range of colour, whereas 8-bit you don't have that, and this is where you get kind of that division between all the colours, and you can see very clearly that the colours are starting to break up in the background. Feel free to research into that a little bit more, it's a little bit technical. What we can do to try and fix this for the most part is go to Filter, Noise and Add Noise, and that'll start to reduce that banding in the background. We've got Uniform and we've got Gaussian. We want to click on Gaussian, tick Monochromatic, and we only want to add 1% because we're going to start to add noise into this image. We don't want too much in there. Like if you add 3, look at all that noise now. Although we've rid completely of that banding, and we don't want that. We can see 2. We're still getting banding, and it looks like it's like shot on film. So we go for 1. All right, and then from here, all I would do is I'm going to select my eraser. We're going to have a fairly soft edge, 100% opacity, 100% flow. I'm going to press stop here. I'm going to hide the background, and then I'm literally just going to go in here. I'm going to erase that off here. The reason why we've got such a soft brush is that if you have a hard edge, it'll be really noticeable after you've erased it from the little girl. We can turn her on, make sure you haven't got any edges that you've left in that are blurred. And there we go. And then we've got this kind of more, go from this background to something a little bit cleaner. You can't see too much of the difference right now, but you will see later as we work on our statement image. The final one that I'm going to make are your dodge and burn layers. So as you know, we've got the dodge and burn tool here, and if you're listening to some previous videos, we spoke about kind of making global adjustments to an image. So this would affect every area of highlight, but kind of really bring them out in some hot spots like that. The same with the burn tool. So we don't use these. You only use the dodge tool if you're cleaning up a signature background. Sometimes you can use it in the eyes, which I'll show you a bit later on when we edit our statement image. But for now, we're going to create 2 layers that you'll have more control over. So I'm going to call this dodge and burn function key. Alright, record. So the first one that we'll make, so you go into your curve again, we'll call this one dodge. All you want to do is drag that up here. Click onto the white square here, this is the layer mask, and then we're going to hide the layer mask by pressing Control I. And now later you'll be able to paint on, as we go through dodging and burning, you'll be able to see how you use this tool, how you bring back through that really light layer that you just created back through using layer masks. The second one we're going to call burn, and you're just going to drag that the opposite way because we want this to affect the darker parts of the image. Don't worry about how crazy it looks right now. You want it to look like that. Control I. You've got your dodge and burn. Let's select our brush, and whilst we're here, let's select the dodge and burn brush, and that should come up. You can see everything, all of the layers that we've just made here. That should come up when you make, when you load this action. So press stop there. Let's delete those. If we go back onto the little selector brush, we can see that the dodge and burn brush will come up. Play. Here you go, you've got your dodge and burn brush. Everything's ready to go. Easy. And that is how you want to have your have your Photoshop set up for this next section of retouch that we're going to do.